I've been doing this for a long time, 20 years, participated in lots of different things like the gear and other SIGs and stuff like that. So just like in every presentation, we have a quick agenda just so you know what I'm going to talk about, and because I guess agendas are something that everybody likes. I'm going to talk about some common questions that we as QSAs get during an assessment, especially about cloud and advanced cloud organizations and architectures. We're going to talk about how PCI DSS relates to advanced cloud, in my opinion. Team up with QSAs, how you can work better with your QSA when you have one of these types of advanced cloud configurations, assessing those, some of the things that we've learned as we do the assessments on advanced clouds, and then hints for QSAs, hints for the assessed entities, and then some takeaways. So we do a lot of these audits, and when I started doing this 20 years ago, the clouds only were in the sky. Now they're in almost 60%, 70% of our assessments have a cloud portion. And we get these questions typically. Why does PCI DSS not seem to cover the cloud technology that I'm using? Can our system even be understood by a QSA? We're so advanced, maybe we can't even be compliant. We're using the newest stuff. What can we do? How do we get this assessed? Servers are a thing of the past. We've known that for a long time. Where do I apply my PCI requirements? So these are some common questions that these companies have. So I'd like to kind of talk to both those being assessed and even QSAs doing assessments today so that we can kind of be level set. Just to make sure that we're kind of on the same page, I wanted to define when I say traditional cloud, what I mean, and when I say advanced cloud, what I mean. Traditional clouds, I think, are the things that we've seen years ago came out. You get a big server, you put a hypervisor on there, you install 10 Windows machines, 2 Linux machines, you put them in a network, and it basically looks almost, if you drew a picture of it, it looked just like it did if you had physical systems. They were full OSs. You had even maybe a virtual firewalls, things like that are all together. They make it really look just like a network. When I say advanced cloud, these are really the technologies that are getting more and more popular today. And there are things like microservices, tiny slivers of an OS, a Linux OS or a Windows OS, that does one specific thing. That's like containers is also a term that you hear a lot. Lambda functions or other kind of Google functions that it's not even a server, it's not even a piece of an OS, it's just a function that's running that maybe serves up a web page or a portion of a web page. Infrastructure as code is another big thing that we're seeing a lot of. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But all of these things in this advanced cloud, they don't really mimic a physical system. It's more ethereal. And where's my firewall? Well, it's this set of rules that kind of helps that, right? It's not a physical device anymore like a Palo Alto. So, I guess I don't profess to be the world's expert on cloud. I'm just a QSA. And we just audit people that have cloud systems. However, I really want to make sure that we and I focus on the principles that are really supposed to be applied in any kind of a software, network, cloud situation. And we have these situations, these technologies that are evolving so quickly, it's really hard sometimes to keep up. And that's where some of these questions come from. How can I be compliant? I'm using the newest thing. Nobody even knows about it. So PCI DSS doesn't really contain references specifically to this new cloud technology that you're using, and probably never will. And I think that's a planned thing. We hope that the PCI DSS is built in such a way that it's technology agnostic and can be able to contain principles that can be used in any situation. That's the idea. So as a QSA, that's what I look for, are those principles that I can apply. I mentioned before, companies get really frustrated when they don't see, their tool mentioned in the PCI. And so they say the PCI is horrible, it doesn't work. I'm just going, no, let's go back to the basics and really figure that out. So figuring out those core principles help us guide these assessments. Here's kind of 6 points that I've kind of come up with to illustrate this thing. How do you team up with your QSA to really get some success when you're doing an advanced cloud assessment? Number one, understand and apply these base principles. QSA community's job, our job, is to really kind of work with you and help you identify and discuss those core principles. I think one thing that's frustrating to me as a QSA, not that I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not too bad. I figured out a lot of stuff over a lot of years. And I think sometimes people come to me and say, well, I want a QSA that knows exactly what I'm doing, has had experience with my very exact advanced cloud system. And I'm going, well, sorry, I don't. But I'm pretty smart, and I can learn, and I can read. And I can read, on the web how to do stuff. So make sure you understand that pre-existing knowledge isn't necessarily is necessary from a QSA. Help us help you. Help us understand. Discuss it with us. Help us to understand why you think your solution fits here. How can it meet? Be prepared to teach us. And give us references. We'll go read them, all that kind of stuff. Then we together work to see how that solution may measure up against the various PCI testing procedures. And I think one thing that I noticed in a previous assessment I did was be cautious about, sometimes people say, well, our technology is so cool and so advanced, we're way beyond PCI, we don't even need PCI. This one thing that we do can apply to all the PCI requirements. Maybe, but let's confirm that, right? Let's really work together and see. Typically not, but maybe there are some that it can work together on. But the main thing is to communicate, have that open communication between yourselves who are being assessed entities and QSAs, and really just talk it out, have an open mind, work together. I wanted to talk for just a second about the testing procedures. We've talked about requirements and the wording of those requirements. It kind of goes with the same thing. Testing procedures may not also be written in such a way that they may apply directly to an advanced cloud solution. For example, don't try to force a traditional tool into a spot that it shouldn't be. Think about where file integrity monitoring may make sense. Think about where antivirus will make sense. Find where in the technology chain, so sometimes service providers, we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but service providers, the cloud Amazons and the Azures, they have things that they do for you kind of upstream. You got to look for those. Does it make sense really to install a full file integrity monitoring agent on a tiny little container? So look for those things and find out where you might be able to apply upstream the technology rather than just saying, hey, let's do a compensating control. So this is just a quick slide on, here's some of the common advanced cloud technologies that we're seeing in assessments right now. Obviously, security groups have been around forever in both AWS and Azure, network ACLs, the Google Cloud VPCs, load balancers, WAFs, IDSs, network monitoring. All those things are part of these systems in the networking area. Containerization, we've got Google Cloud Run, AWS EC2 Fargate. We're seeing a lot more Fargate situations. Azure containers, Kubernetes. There's a lot of more people using compute functions like Lambda, Azure Functions, Google Cloud Functions. Infrastructure as code has come up in the last year in a lot of assessments where people are now not even dealing with containers. They're only dealing with this code that defines what the containers should do when they're instantiated. So it's more and more abstraction going farther and farther up the chain. People are wanting to, especially virtual companies, right, that don't even have a place where they work. They're doing everything on the cloud, and they want to not even think about containers or servers or anything. They want to just define it in a file and have it be deployed. Storage, obviously we're seeing S3, Azure, blobs, various file encryption technologies are being used, some of them pretty fancy. So which PCI requirements do we spend the most time on in an advanced cloud assessment, or which things are hardest for people to kind of figure out where they need to be applied? Obviously, section 1 is all about kind of network security and controls. So, you've got your cloud equivalents to firewalls and load balancers and things like that. So, not really a big deal there, but we just need to make sure that we're understanding where those controls are in place. Learning, the lingo is half the battle there. Section 2, standards. Yeah, we talk a little bit about that. It's not a big deal. There are cloud security standards, and there's Cloud Security Alliance, and there's all kinds, the CIS even has cloud security stuff now that we look at to make sure is being applied. Section 3, encryption. Encryption is pretty similar wherever. The thing that we're noticing, obviously, is that cloud solutions will offer encryption key management solutions. So understanding that and how those are being used, what the strength of the keys are, that's something that we as QSAs can figure out and help with. There's some fancy file encryption technologies that are used in Microsoft now. Section 4, no real issues. Transmission of data happens about the same. Malware, there are some non-traditional kind of treatments of malware. Do you have malware on a lambda function? I don't know how you do that, right? So you can't install antivirus on a lambda function. So where do you look upstream to see whether that requirement's being met? Section 7, authentication. They may not be OS based. So we as QSAs, I think for years and years are trained to say, well, show me where the password file is and show me where the blah, 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 all this kind of controls are. Now we have to look at kind of overall environment login, AWS login credentials, who has the rights, what rights do they have, can they be escalated, those kinds of things. So we're kind of moving to maybe not an integrated authentication system, but something that's a little bit separate. Passwords, there's really no issues there. Those are the same thing. Section 9, obviously physical security is a little different. You don't have physical servers or networks or things that you're having to secure. So we're really relying on the service provider, the cloud provider, to do that physical security. It's usually referenced in their responsibility matrix anyway. Logging, no real issues. Cloud solutions have a lot of really good logging solutions. Been pretty impressed with, in the advanced systems, all of the detailed logs you can get about even the lambda functions and all of the different containers and all the things that they're doing. Section 11, this is one where I think there's some kind of differences. File integrity monitoring, where do you apply that? Antivirus, where do you apply that? Internal pen testing and internal VA scanning may be a little bit different. Where do you do that when you have a lambda function? How do you do an internal VA scan? So I think QSAs, us as QSAs and our clients need to think about how we then treat those requirements of Section 11. Section 12, obviously responsibility matrix is the most important thing that we have to have. So, before you even talk to your QSA, make sure you understand all the things that your cloud provider is doing for you. Know what Fargate provides. Know what Google Cloud provides. So here's some real life examples. Last summer, I did an assessment for a company in the US, and they kind of approached me with this, we don't think you can ever understand what we're doing, we're so awesome. And we're doing something that is so far advanced from you, we're not even sure you think that we can be PCI compliant because you won't be able to understand it. And I'm going, okay, well just give me a shot, right? So I did notice that their previous assessor, and I'm not saying anything bad, but it was just an interesting thing, had made them install file integrity monitoring on every little container. They had 50 containers, and they had to add extra software, extra libraries, extra everything to the container so that they could run the file integrity monitoring agent. Does that make sense? Really? Maybe not. I'm seeing some shaking no heads, which is really great. So that doesn't necessarily make sense. Let's figure out where that file integrity monitoring function may be taking place. Is it upstream at the registry of the container OS? Is it in also the container definition files? Where are the things that you need to apply that? Where are changes going to need to be detected? And does the service provider even do those things for you? So in this case, I said, no, you don't need to run FIM on each container. Let's move it upstream and meet the requirement. I didn't write a compensating control either. I just said, this is really met by something upstream, so let's just use that. Malware protection, very similar. You got to look upstream, because maybe it doesn't make sense the same way to install a virus agent on every container, and how do you even do that in a lambda function anyway? So you're starting to see, the point is look upstream, find out where the risk can be handled that requirement is trying to address. What is the objective of that requirement? Internal pen testing, I think, we've seen a lot of people go and say, well, I need to have an internal pen test, and they may say, well, we want you to install a separate VPC into your environment so that we can do a test from there. And it's like, wait a minute, we're creating a whole different environment just so that we can say we did an internal pen test the way that we've always done it before. That may not make sense. Maybe it makes more sense to say, let's try to attack as an authorized user in the AWS interface or something like that. What can we do? So our pen test team has taken totally different tack now when we do pen tests for advanced cloud systems than what is traditional. Infrastructure as code, again, that's way far upstream. And the TPSP is really monitoring their fragment OSs for viruses, for everything. So spend time in that code repository where the infrastructure as cloud is being defined. How is that going to be changed? How can that be affected by external forces? Here's some examples, some quick turnkey cloud solutions. We've got Fargate. We've talked about Azure Container, Kubernetes. These are, this is not to spend time on. These are some of the things that they say we will do a whole lot of stuff for you. So as QSAs, we need to learn and understand really what does it mean on Fargate. And let's take Fargate as a quick example. We don't need to digest this slide at all, but what I'm saying is, here is the things on the bottom that's managed by AWS. Here are the things that the customer manages. Understanding clearly what you do and what the customer does and what the service, Fargate, does is going to be super important for both the QSA and the assessed entity. So closing up here, what are some hints for QSAs? What have we learned? What have we talked about? Again, this is hard to do in 20 minutes, right? We could talk about this for hours, and I'm not getting into the nitty-gritties of technologies and stuff like that, but these are the main points. QSAs don't blindly just apply the old way, the good way, right, that we're all familiar with maybe in the past, to new cloud environments. It just doesn't make sense. Don't get stuck on the words in the testing procedures and try to match those. Use your head, figure out where that may really apply. Don't overuse compensating controls just because you can't necessarily interpret the exact thing that seems to be written there. So in other words, where can file integrity monitoring really be applied upstream? Don't just say, I have to do it on the container itself, as an example. Protect those admin interfaces that you're used to configure systems, used to configure infrastructure as cloud. Focus on where unauthorized changes can actually occur. So here's some hints for an assessed entity. You know what? It's okay that PCI DSS doesn't use the exact wording. It really is. Communicate with your QSA. Don't just assume that he or she won't be able to understand your advanced systems. Don't dismiss that same QSA for not having exact experience. Let them learn, let them figure it out. We're not a dumb community. We kind of have some experience here. So another thing you could do is read the PCI DSS requirement yourself, start anticipating questions that your QSA may want to ask you about your situation. Locate all summaries for responsibilities from your service providers. Those are great to have before, instead of saying, QSA, you go figure it out. Well, no, this is a thing that we do together. You go find the responsibility matrix. You help us read it. You help us provide it to us. We interpret it together. Locate those AOCs as well is important. So In short, oh, I'm at 0. Here's my takeaways. PCI DSS really does strive to be technology independent, and we appreciate that. And you know what? It's written maybe vaguely sometimes. Thank goodness. Because otherwise, we'd all be in a big trouble because it would have to change every 6 months, every week almost in advanced cloud situations. So PCI DSS really is focused on security controls and objectives, apply those objectives and the intent of the requirement to these new technologies, move your thinking upstream in advanced cloud, find out where the compliance really happens. And I don't have time for questions, but if you have any questions, come see us at our booth over there. All right, thank you very much.